TrueTales&Testimonies, where real stories reveal the unseen battle between light and darkness. I'm your host, Thomas Jones, better known as the Thewokeprophet. Every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we dive into powerful experiences that will challenge and inspire you. Sit back, listen closely, and let's get into tonight's episode. All right, tonight, y'all, we have another special guest on True Tales and Testimony. Now, I will allow her to introduce herself. She'll give you some background information on herself and kind of tell you what she does. I'm glad you can make it.
So I'm Annie Emprima. I am a metaphysical trauma researcher. This is a journey that I did not pick. It picked me back about 10 years ago while I was deployed. All of my senses opened up, and there was no warning order, no instruction manual, no regulation for it. It just happened concurrently with the deployment and the stressors and the PTSD that comes with being overseas in the Middle East. So over a great many years, about a decade now, I've spent a lot of time researching the beyond, the metaphysical part of our reality, because so much of my understanding, my training, and my mission in life is coming from that space. So I have a lot of teachers within me that come forward. They'll either come forward as whispers in front of me, or they will find their way to me to guide me to pay attention to certain things. And some of those things would have been during the pandemic, while other people were worrying about a virus. I was researching human patterns, trauma, fear, what happens when people are in distress and how that changes their energetic field. And so I have spent a lot of time researching how traumas become diseases and disorders in relation and from the perspective of metaphysics. So that's my lens, which means I also take on a lot of clients that have unusual and paranormal capabilities, and they want to understand it and have a cleaner lens to look at what is happening to them and not come from a place of fear or uncertainty. So that's the short notes for what I do.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you, so would you say that this is a spiritual gift, or is this more so researching and learning and just kind of working with the tools in terms of the books and the different knowledge that you're getting from the book? So which way would you?
It's both. I stand in the rouleau. So if
Okay.
anyone knows what a Venn diagram is, those three circles where there's a little like guitar pick looking thing in the middle,
Mhm.
I I am here to bridge. So I'm here to bridge the spiritual world, the metaphysical world, which is not really spiritual, and then the physical world. How do we make sense with science and research of the things that we can't measure with reliable, predictable, and repeatable data?
Okay. So was it something that I guess transpired to like motivate you to want to do this? Like what prompted you to want to jump in this type of work?
I didn't want to. The deployment happened, and it shook every spoke on my wheel, my life house wheel, the friendships and my career and my marriage, and so family, every my finances, every spoke on my wheel collapsed when
Mm,
I came back from deployment. And then I became very, very guided with voices saying, pay attention to this, and we need you here. And so that I walk the bridge between the science world and the metaphysical world. So it wasn't so much something that I chose,
mhm.
it's something that developed as I healed.
Okay. All right. And like you said, you was a vet. What branch of the military were you in?
Army.
Army. Okay. All right. So to me, it sounds more like would you call it a spiritual awakening? Because I know with me, I got hurt and I noticed that things start opening up. So would you consider this to be a spiritual awakening?
Oh yeah, I call it a grand spiritual awakening for sure, because it 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 was a massive pivot in my life. I can't go back to being the version of me that existed before all of this happened. I can't, that person doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. All right. So just to get a clear understanding, so you remove, for example, I call them demons, demonic energies, negative energies, right? So I know we have different terms, you know.
Mhm.
So what exactly is it that you remove? Like, what do you refer to them as?
Oh, I don't remove. I have conversation with them. So
Okay.
I've never encountered in all of my work
Hmm.
that I've done, I've never encountered something that was what it appeared to be. I've encountered things that attempted to scare. I've encountered things that were mis identified, but I've never encountered something that was truly like of an evil substance. Most of the time, what I encounter are entities that are doing a job and they will do their job at all costs. They are very devoted and very dedicated to their job. Maybe that job is protecting a home, land, a child, but they are very dedicated to that job. And sometimes people have, let's say, attachments. In all of the work that I've done with attachments, I learned very quickly that they're never uninvited. At some point, somebody invited them. So it could be the 14-year-old version of us that was very distraught and said, "Hey, I need help from anybody out there." And something came and visited. But when we've interviewed it, when we've asked it where it came from and why is it here, how is it helping, we get a very different story. So my relationship, my experiences with things that would be labeled, demonic or satanic or whatever it may be, I don't have those same relationships with those energies. I have a different relationship.
So when you say you talk to them,
Mhm.
so can you help me to understand that more? Like, for example, with me, like I I work to remove them, and I know you said you don't work to remove it, you talk to them. So what would be, I guess, what would be the purpose of talking to them versus
Because
trying to remove them?
let's say it's a haunted house. We can try to, there's a lot of like extraction and language. But when I go in and I ask why, what is it that you're here to do? Like I'm not, which is, a very feminine approach, masculine approach that's a little bit different. I have like, what are you doing? Why are you here? How are you helping? And then when the conversation comes forward, then we have information to know how to reconcile the person that's put in the complaint and the entity that's creating the issue, because now there's conversation, and typically the entity will say, oh well, this is what I need, this is my job, this is what I promised to do. And then it's a lot easier for us to have either a cohabitable relationship or to find another purpose for that entity to go do something else. And I'm really minimizing it and simplifying it, but this might take a whole hour, not a 2-minute conversation. But most of the time when we find out why it's there and what it's doing, the person that is troubled by it has a greater understanding of how to navigate around that. And I have found that, and I there's even a story in my book about this energy that looked like a demogorgon thing. And when we talked to it, it was really afraid. And so in its fear, like a porcupine, it puffed up and it was like, "Rah!" And really what it was protecting its own fear of that space.
Okay, so you've never, I guess, encountered something that I would call demonic, something that's trying to attack you. Everything is pretty much, I guess, what, friendly, you would say?
Well, when the person calls me, they're experiencing something very different. When I walk in, that energy will behave differently from me. And it's not in this grandiosity. It's just I'm not coming in with the same energy. I'm coming in with a different energy. And so I don't encounter the heaviness that somebody else might encounter. When I come in, it's like when the teacher comes in after teacher walks away and the students in the classroom start playing. When the teacher comes back in, everybody goes silent again. That tends to happen.
So when you're working with someone, have you ever faced like any type of attack from working with the person?
No. No. Uh, no, because I use a different approach that keeps things a little bit more contained so that what opens up stays in that space when we walk away. I use a container called the black room. So when I'm working with the person to address what is in front of us, we both go into this expanded consciousness state that has like a Faraday box. So we're going into that to understand what's happening so that when we leave, we're not taking any visitors with us.
Okay. All right. So, what would you say your, I guess I would say your most frightening experience, or have you had one, or I would say frightening or supernatural experience, one of those cases that just really stuck out to you.
I don't really get super frightened with metaphysics. It's just not in my being, but I've had some very strange encounters. I Back in 2019, I was doing quantum healing hypnosis technique, and I brought someone into a hypnotic state to do the QHHT, and she started speaking in a many of my clients speak in tongues, many different languages, both ancient, current, and beyond. But this one was her whole body was vibrating, and entities were coming through her to speak to me of, we have missed you. Like, this is me coming in 2 years after my deployment. I was not quite I wasn't expecting it, but I didn't know what to do with it either. And then I was working with a client. We were in a session, I think back in 2022, and an entity kind of hijacked our session and was coming through to her to talk to me. And I had to stop that very quickly because she was paying for her session. That was not appropriate. And I set boundaries very quickly. But they came through her very quickly and raised her vibration to get to me, to talk to me. And that eventually I had to set aside time outside of that session with a group of some of my team members to tap in and find out what was going on and why they were using my clients to connect.
So you mentioned something about tongues, and I know
Mhm.
everyone does not understand exactly what tongues is. So can you explain that when you said a client was speaking in tongues? Can you give us a little bit more of an understanding of what you mean when you say that?
Uh, it, there's a pretty big drop down menu of what can happen. So for some, my Christian clients, they might just break into speaking in tongues, which is really sounds and partial syllables, repeated sounds that don't really make any sense, and they're not really a language. There's some of my spiritual clients have this light language flow to it. It's a really powerful, goosebumps, hair goes up. Whatever's coming out of them affects the nervous system. I have a client who, in I think it was her fifth session, private session working with me, we were doing trauma work. And in the fifth session, she tapped into something that was a little bit beyond and started speaking this language. And we thought it was just some language. And then we happened to be in the same, a new member of an energy group joined who happened to be really well versed in Hebrew and ancient Christian history. So when she heard the other individual speaking, she said, "Oh, girlfriend, you're speaking ancient Hebrew."
Mm.
And so that can come forward. And sometimes it's a language that is within us, so within our time period. Sometimes it's a language beyond, and it can be a language of another species that is just carrying forward in the master memory. Um, there's a lot of things that it can be.
Okay. So tongues and light language.
Mm-hmm.
We would say, so are you saying they're the same or you think
Well,
they're
they're
different?
different purpose.
Different. So,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time when I'm hearing light language, I'm hearing it from people who are calling themselves like star seeds.
Yeah.
So, do you normally hear that from people that call this stuff SARS seeds, or can it just come from like an average person that doesn't say that,
It,
or it's just a mixture?
it is not uncommon among my community for people to start picking up languages because we're vibrating at such a high level. We're bound to pick up intelligence and information or activate and awaken something that is beyond this realm of reality, this dimension of length with height. So anything can happen,
Okay.
and it can come from anywhere depending on what that person's purpose is. I'm very purpose focused. Like I don't take people into their past lives for entertainment. We go into other lifetimes to understand how to help this lifetime. So everything is about forward facing and mission purpose in this life. And so even when I'm doing things that are a little bit paranormal, it's how are we going to take this information and make it more digestible for everyday people and to help individuals move forward instead of feeling like they're being attacked or haunted or that their world is being interfered with.
Okay. So it's safe to say that you believe in reincarnation.
Um, yes and no. The level that I work in is not of past life. So very often, even with QHHT, it's we're going to go into a past life. We're going past in time. When I'm using the mural modality, the mural method modality to go through time and space, everything is happening concurrently. So I might work with a client and we walk in and she's visiting another lifetime, but those two lifetimes in the sixth dimension are concurrent. They're both living in this moment of time. Just as we collapse down to 3D, it's only linear. So yes, I believe that the soul has multiple lifetimes to experience, but at the level I work in, they're all happening at once.
Okay. Yeah, I heard a lot of people say that in terms of the lifetimes, simultaneously, everything is just happening at the same time. And even when I try to explain that to people, they still have a hard time trying to understand that because I know some people say, okay, but we have the past, we
Mm-hmm.
have the present, then we have the future. So they'll say, okay, well, why do we name it the past, present, and the future if it's all happening at the same time? Because
It's
even go ahead.
it's not happening at the same time in 3D. 3D is only a tightrope that we can only go forward with. We can only move forward in 3D. When we're in 4D, we can kind of go backward and forward. When we go up into the higher things, length, width, height, time, space, the amount of information that exists in that same space has much more information, much more data. So it would be really confusing to our brain to try to orient to a higher dimensional timeline. This is easier to anchor into. People can get this and they can digest this.
That makes sense. That makes sense. When a person comes to you and you're working with them and you're in a session with them, can you kind of walk us through a session so we can have an idea of how a session would look like working with you?
There people come to me for different reasons. Many come from medical reasons. They have this disease. They want to find out what traumas created this disease. We go in, we do the trauma work, we alleviate the disease, the disorder. But sometimes people will come to me and say, hey, I have this story. I was abducted. I want to know what happened. And when we go into the mural method, so I use an elevator system, which is really just to preoccupy the mind, have it count. And it just gives the mind something to do while I come in and overlay behind to overlay into the nervous system. Then we go to the black room, and the black room is where the superconscious can present anything it needs to present to help the conscious understand what's going on in the subconscious. So it's like the superconscious comes in to set the scene and help us understand in a way that is meaningful to the awake mind. So if we're going to do it like an alien abduction, I don't go back where they're looking at it through first person. We're going to go back and we're going to witness it like a ghost or an observer in the room. So when we go to the mural, we're going back to a particular time. like a time machine, and we're going to watch as observers what's happening to the younger self. And like with alien abductions, we'll watch what may happen. Light comes in, or the room gets golden, or whatever may happen, and then we will coattail with that individual. So if they get lifted up, we're going to follow up. And I'm with the client, I'm tracking what they're doing. They're running the show, they're telling me what they're seeing, but I'm tracking what's coming in from their superconscious. And the superconscious might say, okay, keep your awareness in this zone. Let's find, I need you to see what happened here. So then we will watch what happens. And if there's an entity, we'll be able to communicate with that entity to find out what really happened. Because so many times we take this information and we don't have enough resources and education behind it. And our mind always wants to make sense of something. So it'll fill in the blank when we don't have answers. So instead of doing that, we gather more data, we ask more questions to make the picture a little bit crisper so that it makes more sense to the mind and is more peaceful in its settling of that memory.
Mhm.
And then we come back.
Okay. Now, I noticed you just talked about like abduction. So, can you feel can you feel different things coming from, let's just say, for example, if you're working with someone that has like an attachment, it's an entity,
Mhm.
versus working with someone, let's just say if they have an alien attached to them. Or let me just ask you this, has it ever been a case when you've worked with someone and they've had entity and then another person has had like an alien attached to them? Are you able to feel which one is stronger? Which entity is stronger? Is the entities, does that feel stronger, or does the alien feel stronger, or that's not really?
Purpose feels stronger. So I've encountered attachments like a 14-year-old. You go back to that 14-year-old scenario. If that 14-year-old was dealing with a lot of conflict and some scary stuff and says, please, anybody help me, it could be an attachment that's like grandma, like I'm gonna dysfunctional grandma. I'm gonna take care of this child at all costs,
Mhm.
even if it kind of makes a mess, because they think they're doing the right thing. But it's not very helpful when that individual becomes 44 years old and grandma's still trying to take care of a 14-year-old. It gets in the way. So sometimes it's purpose, and purposes can be really sticky. Like until they understand that they're not being helpful and it's not in the best interest of the person. And sometimes they just need another job. We just got to give them something else to do. And then they will exit the space. And I've had entities that are really big energies, but they're not stuck in the purpose of it. So sometimes there's a pass by, like an entity that just wants to be able to observe through a human eyes. Okay. They're
Right.
not, they might be a bigger energy, a higher dimensional energy, but their purpose isn't sticky. Like they don't feel so invested in that person's life. So so it's less about the strength of the entity and more about why they're there, which is why it's important for me to know what's really happening. I need to ask the questions.
And are you able to see the entities, or
No,
just
I feel
also
it.
communicate?
Mhm.
Just
It
communicate.
comes in my ear. Mhm. Like telepathically, it'll come in as a knowing, but then I will get intel from the superconscious. That person's superconscious will say, this entity doesn't need to be here anymore. Or the superconscious will say, this entity is helpful, just not helpful in the way that you need them right now. Give them a new job. Task them at making the person go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night so that they get better sleep hygiene, something like that.
Right. So during the session, is the person, are they conscious?
Yeah, just like
Or,
this.
oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, do you have any stories that you can share about alien abduction? I know you say you had a few cases. Any stories that you can share? I know some people, they don't believe in aliens, or they think people make this stuff up. I definitely know it's true. I see them all the time. So I
Many of my
definitely,
clients felt the same way.
right, right. So yeah, let other people, well, yeah. So do you have any, do you have any stories that you can share about that?
Yeah, yeah. And there's different types. So the most common are are what I call upgrades.
Mhm.
Somebody is connected to some higher power, and it's not every human. So I don't want everyone to think, oh, I need to go find my alien people. That's not how it works. But some people have access to higher vibrational species that maybe they're a part of that, maybe, Octurians or Palladians or some other planet star system. And when those individuals need an upgrade, sometimes it's easier to bring the soul essence up to the space than it is to bring the resources down to the human, the physical being. So they will lift up the person, but all the mind may remember is that something happened and they were taken without their permission, despite the fact that the superconscious signed off the authorization to go do this. Yes, I want them to have more spiritual superpowers because they're here to do a mission and it's time for this, for them to level up. But the memo doesn't come down to the conscious mind. So if the conscious mind wakes up in the middle of this movement, they can panic and they can get, they might freeze and get uh, they're awake, but they can't move. And you, most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, those are just moments when the mind woke up before it was supposed to. And it just takes a couple minutes to reset. So friendly, signed off, vetted, okay, that's the majority. But every so often I'll come across something that's just a little beyond. Like I had a client one time, he had some injury to his eyes, and we were trying to find out the source of it because that's the core of what I do is let's go find the source of the trauma. We heal the trauma. And vision is one of the things that I've worked with quite a bit. People who've lost vision caused by trauma, we can restore that vision. And so in this case, we weren't expecting an alien abduction. We were just going back in time through the mural to go find out the root of his vision loss. And we stepped into a room with his younger self sleeping. And then we were watching the younger self get lifted up. And we're like, oh, what's going on here? Let's go find out. And we get onto the craft. And I'm like the investigator. I'm the detective. I need to know what's going on, and we're going to talk to all the parties, and we're going to formulate a big story, the full story.
Now, when you're saying craft, you're talking about a UFO, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And what ended up happening is the entities that we were talking to were not connected to him whatsoever. They were not signed off by the superconscious. This was not a planned event. They were just entities that had the capability because they were higher dimensional, and they were studying us like a child might study a salamander or a snail or a fish. And so they picked up this entity to examine him, and in doing so they caused some damage to his eyes, and they apologized and they made it right, and we came back.
Mm, wow. So when you was on that craft, was you able to like look around the craft, or was you just kind of
Mm-mm.
just focused on what was taking place, what was happening?
Yeah, because I'm seeing it in its true form, not in the mind's comfort form. So for him, he might have seen something more Hollywood of a craft.
Okay.
I'm seeing energy field. I'm seeing just this non-physical communication of an energy ball or movement because they were high enough in a vibration that they weren't compatible with eyes. So, but sometimes the mind needs to see something to make it make sense. And so he was seeing them in a more physical form.
Okay. Now, do you work with people that are nonverbal as well?
No,
Okay.
they have to hear and they have to be able to speak, but I can work with blind.
Mhm. Another thing, because I know people ask me this question a lot.
Mhm.
Now, how are you able to distinguish if a person is just, you know, what they say, they be like, cuckoo, cuckoo, of a person is,
Mhm.
losing their
Mhm.
mind, mental issues, versus it being a real issue, a real trauma or attack? Is there like a way that you can separate the two? Because I know with me, this stuff can get, it can get tricky. these things, they play
Yeah.
games. So,
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I have the perfect answer to that. I've sometimes it's taken me 4 or 5 sessions with someone to realize we're not on the same playing field. We're not in metaphysics. We
right.
are in psychosis of some type. Yeah, I've worked with individuals. They came to me. One of them, I thought it was very weird. Each session, it was like I was talking to her for the first time. I'm like, maybe she's busy. Justified it like this. No, by the fourth session, I realized we were working with dissociative identity disorder, and there were different personalities meeting with me, which is why each session the questions were so radically different. We weren't progressing. It was like we were starting over, but in a different direction. Like one
Right.
time it was about business, and then it was about relationship. And then by the fourth session, she's like, "You're in my calendar, but I don't know who you are." Like, how do you not know who I am? We've been
Right.
meeting.
Right. Yes.
Like, oh, we might not be working with the same personality. Uh, that has happened. I've also worked with individuals that had schizophrenia. So they had these internal dialogue, like their psyche was fragmented in speaking independently, but they also had radio intel of what was happening outside of them. Whatever happened snapped both. And so they're hearing things that I can't hear, but then they're hearing things that I could hear. And that can get really convoluted because I don't know how to weed that out. If I know if someone's diagnosed as this or someone's diagnosed as this, I know the perimeters around it. I don't know how to repair. I can repair the radio connection of why they're getting intel that they shouldn't be getting from outside sources. I'm not equipped to handle schizophrenia.
Okay. Now, a lot of people that are involved into the metaphysical world,
Mhm.
may be familiar with like light body. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with that term, the light body?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I teach people how to feel their energy field. I With enough vibration, all of us are able to feel the layers outside of our body, and it's the light body that is traveling, that's doing more of the traveling.
So let me just ask you what the light body, because that's just something I'm just real fascinated with.
Mhm.
So what would be like your definition, or if you had to describe the light body so people can understand exactly like what a light body is? Uh,
It's a little bit difficult because in our language we we don't have language that breaks it down in a way that we can feel and see. And so we've got all these spiritual people with all these different definitions.
mm,
We have an energy system inside of us. When we look at the meridians in traditional Chinese medicine, that system is inside of us. And we have a nervous system inside of us that is physical. We also have a nervous system that exists outside of us, which helps us co-regulate with other humans.
right.
And so we can look at it in different ways. When we're talking about the light body, we're really looking at multiple categories under that blanket term because we have an inner light body, we have our whole light body, which is more spherical. And so it depends on what's happening to understand which. It's like saying, like I'm in Las Vegas, so it's like saying, oh yeah, in the United States. Like, okay, well, where in the United States? What region? Like we've got the Southwest, we've got the Northeast, we've got the Pacific Northwest. Like, what region are we in? So light body is generic, and then there's categories within it that help us define more precisely what that's doing.
What it is. Have
Mhm.
you actually worked with a person that has like achieved their light bodies, or they'll, or are
Well, we
you?
all have a light body. We all do. We all have an energy system within us
Okay.
that can move if it chooses to independently.
Okay. Yeah, that light body, that is definitely something that it definitely fascinates me. And it's like, you don't have a large population that they can fully understand the the light body. And I know you did say something about the meridians. So my understanding of the meridians, the way I explain it, just like how we have blood vessels that carry the blood. So the meridians. it's like a vehicle to carry like the prana energy, the life force,
Mhm,
throughout
mhm.
his body. So is that the same way you understand it?
Yeah, it's like if we think of the body as hardware of a computer and the mind is the operating system, this is the electrical current that turns it on.
Mhm.
So when someone's about to pass, they're no longer plugged in, and now we're wearing down the battery until they fully pass.
Okay. Now, during your sessions, these people, they have these attachments to
Mhm,
them.
mhm,
I work with people, different levels of the attachments, but
mhm,
one thing it does, it torments the people. It causes a lot of anger, a lot of
mhm,
rage.
mhm.
So, during your sessions, have you ever encountered someone that got angry, got violent, or tried to come at you? Because when you're doing these sessions, are they like in-person session, or is it virtual or?
Global. I'm global.
Okay, okay, all right. So do they, has it ever been a time when someone gets violent? Because like I said, when I'm removing things from my work, they
Mhm.
crouch down, they jump, stick their tongues out. Yeah, I
Like you're
see it
chasing
all.
feral cats.
Right,
I
right.
don't want to chase feral cats
Yeah, right. So it's just kind of calm. That's what you're saying. It's calm.
because my energy is my energy for the work that I'm doing here. It's a very different energy. They can't throw the temper tantrum,
Okay.
and but that's also not the core of what I do. The core of what I do is a much larger purpose, but my energy carries enough weight, like a weighted blanket,
Okay.
that when I'm talking to entities, they can't throw the temper tantrum. They can't, but I'm not going to chase them either. It's, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation and we're going to find out what's going on.
Okay. Now with me,
Mhm.
working with these entities, I have to do what I call spiritual hygiene, spiritual
Mhm.
maintenance,
Mhm.
because you're dealing with these energies and uh, you can't be affected by, you can't absorb some of this stuff. So it's different things that I have to do. Now, with you, is there anything that you have to do, like when you work with someone they have a bad case? Do you ever like feel sick, get headaches or anything, or everything is just still pretty calm?
Yeah. The, I, and I can't explain why. I can't explain why that is. I can't teach it. I just know that my energy doesn't, it's like it doesn't tolerate it doesn't tolerate bad behavior from children. Like
Right, right.
these like temper tantrum and energies. It doesn't tolerate it. So whatever it is that is innate in me is like a weighted blanket, and it doesn't come to me.
Okay.
But I also know that my understanding of trauma is part of my mission in the metaphysical perspective of trauma, in that the stronger we are and the more grounded we are, there's less room for uh, intolerance. And so, because I work so deeply in trauma and the sacredness of trauma healing, that I think is part of why, because of my work in ceremony and healing, is what prevents that from happening to me. It's like a natural antivirus or a natural vaccine for me.
Okay. Have you ever worked with angels before?
I work with people's angels, but angels are not part of my personal daily connection.
Okay. All right. Now, I know you kind of touched a bit on like haunted houses. Have you ever been called to come in and do anything with haunted houses or haunted properties or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't do extraction, but I will visit as a communicator, an investigator. So I'm not there to pull anything out. I'm there to find out why they're there. Because so often what we think is this terrible thing that's interfering is doing a job. And then when we find out what that job is, it's just easier to navigate around it. So if someone's like, yeah, I'm here to protect this burial site, I'm here to protect this room. Okay, well, then why don't we just respectfully come to an agreement that says you get this room and we get the rest of the house, and you don't bother, like, you don't bother anybody. You're doing your job and we're living, these people that own the home or the space that they're living, and it's a mutual respect. So that's most of the things that I do. But someone will say, let's go to a haunted house, and they're feeling and things are happening. And then I walk into that house and none of that happens. It's like the children are afraid. Like Nanny McPhee is what it reminds me of. Nanny McPhee shows up and none of the children are behaving, because I don't, I think it's just because my energy does not tolerate it.
Okay.
I don't get the response.
Okay. So, would you consider yourself like, because people have different terms. I heard the word light workers, Stasis. Would you consider yourself being in any of those categories, or?
No, no, I very, very strongly align with metaphysical trauma researcher, because it's at the core of everything I do. It's helping people move forward. So if they're not able to move forward because they've got this energy thing going on, my job is to help them understand it, to clear it, to move forward. And I'm very tunnel vision on my purpose.
Okay. Now with me, it's a lot that I have to do. For
Mhm.
example, I have to eat a certain way, so I'm a vegan. I
Mhm.
can't have soy. I can't have alcohol. And again, it's all this spiritual maintenance stuff
Mhm.
that I have to do. Fasting, praying, meditating. Do you have to do any of that in order to be successful, in what you're doing, or is it just one of those things you can kind of just go with the flow?
Yeah, yes, I have to do different. I have to eat certain foods. Like I don't eat cow products, and for 15 years I was gluten free. But those were trauma based responses that were interfering with my connection. They were not spiritual requests. If I drink alcohol, I don't work with anyone for 24 hours. Um, I just, in the sense of I want to respect the connection, but I don't have any requirements.
Okay. All right. Now, earlier you talked about a book. Can you give us some more information about your book and where people can find your book at? And
Yeah. And thank you for asking. What I found in working in metaphysics early in my career, when things got really big very quickly on TikTok, is that the work that I did became very addictive. People wanted more of it. So if they were coming from a space of like, of not understanding, and then suddenly they have these capabilities, the addictive tendencies were coming in. And very quickly I learned that it's easy for people to go into psychosis, chasing this work. And so the first book I wrote is Trauma Whispers Before It Roars. And this is for everyday people. Anyone can read it. It helps people understand trauma, because at the core of it, I can't bring someone into higher consciousness state to play. For healing, yes, because we're going in and I'm walking side by side with them to heal with the intent of healing. But if they want to go explore higher realms of consciousness, I can't take someone there if they're not willing to do the trauma work. They got to be, so in terms of hygiene, trauma healing is the priority for me and my clients. My philosophy, let's get the trauma out of the way so that everything we see is with clear eyes. And then our fears from our past are not invoking something in front of us that doesn't need to be there. So it's really clearing out the old so that we have stronger boundaries and we have wiser eyes to experience things in the much bigger playgrounds. And so this is the core. This is the first step. This is the mind. Like let's get the mind in the right space and get it in the right level of usefulness. And then my second book will be about the body. And then the third book is the whispers of wisdom of, now that we understand the responsibility we have of healing trauma first before working in this space, let me show you what's possible.
Okay. How many pages is in that book? When you held it up, I thought it was an encyclopedia. I said it's a lot of knowledge in there.
It's a heavy book. It's
Yeah.
440 pages, but it's a
Oh,
very easy read because I wrote it for people that have PTSD.
okay.
And so
Okay.
if you see like the lines are separated quite well,
Okay.
the words are separated in the letters. So someone with dyslexia can read it without getting fatigued.
Okay. Now, if people wanted to find you, how can they find you? Are you on social media, website?
Yeah, Annie Emprima, annieemprima.com. And there's only one of me. So worldwide, any version is either me or a copycat. And so that'll bring people to my website. Um, all of my socials are under one Imprima, so ONE, because there's only one of me.
Okay.
Uh, and then of course AI. Someone can say who is Annie Imprima, and that'll also pop it up.
Okay, come on. Okay. Well, listening to everything you said today, I was wondering, can we switch jobs? Can I take yours and you take mine? Because I'm trying to get out of here because it's a headache every day. So I just wondered, can we switch? Can we switch it up a little bit? But
If you're in Vegas, let me walk with. I'll walk alongside you. Let's go check it out.
okay, hey, sounds like a plan to me. All right, so you okay with taking some questions now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So do we have any questions for Annie, y'all? We got any questions for Annie? Let's see. Yeah, some of them they type like they got arthritis in their fingers, so we gotta wait a little bit today.
The pecking.
Yeah, they type like I used to type back in the day, one at a time. Let's see. So the first question is, how does she view death?
Great question. I Because I work so much in higher dimensional consciousness, everything is happening all at once. So death is the end of one concurrent piece, but something else is coming up. And so for me, death, when I'm done with this lifetime, it's not linear. It's not, I'm done with this lifetime, I'm going to go do something else. Is that I merge back into the higher version of me to go learn something else. And it's constantly cycling concurrently. But there is a delayed period of time where we don't go into something new. There's a review and then we come back in, is how I have seen it through taking my clients into other lifetimes. And when we've talked to the energies in the in-between space, they will explain that as well, that there's a period of unavailability before something new is created with it.
Okay. We have another question. What is the typical what is the typical outcome after you talk to the energies?
With alien abduct, not alien abduction, with attachments, every one of them has either been repurposed, removed, and I say removed is on their own terms. They left on their own terms because we all came to an agreement that that was in the best interest, like a mediator or an arbitrator. They left, but I've had quite a few that said I want to stay with them. I'm really invested in their lifetime, but if I'm not being helpful here, I want to be helpful somewhere else. So we give them a new job.
Okay. And it's another part of the question is, do the individuals ever want the energies to leave them?
All of them. Well,
Mhm.
no, I take that. I was gonna say all of them, but that's not true because some of them are like, I've had them with me for so long that they're a part of my family. They're just not, they're getting in my way. And so that's usually when it's okay to give them a new job. And sometimes the jobs are wild, like hunting for pennies on the ground. Like sometimes that is the job, and the entity is very proud of doing this job. I've never had someone who didn't want the entity and the entity didn't go away. I have had people that said that they want to keep that extra like energy with them as a sense of safety.
Okay. And that question still, she says, do the energies cooperate?
100% of the time.
Okay.
I've never been to a point. I sometimes it's taken a little bit more coercion, like trying to get a 5-year-old to hand over the candy that they stole when they weren't supposed to be eating sugar. It takes a little bit more coercion, but I've never had one just create a ruckus and not do what we've asked. But sometimes we've had to be a little bit gentler with them.
All right. Next question. They want to know, were you injured while you were deployed that triggered your awakening?
The awakening happened, it started 4 days into the deployment, but during the deployment, I was injured. My knees, my ankles, I had PTSD and migraines during the deployment. But 4 days in, when all of my clairs opened up, I noticed very quickly that I was receiving internal intel that nobody else was getting. We arrived in Kuwait February of 2016, and by May, I was flying into Iraq full battle rattle, and our plane started taking ground fire, and a whisper came in my ear and said, "Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay." And I very quickly felt this like wash of peace, calm come in. And so, our plane's taking fire. I have no idea what to do because I was never trained as an Army soldier on what to do with aerial attack. But they will come in and they will like shield me with peace or calmness during difficult times.
Okay. So someone said it's like getting to the core. That's what it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. With trauma work, we're going back to the root moment. And there's a video that's going to be on my website in a short time of a male that I took through the mural. He was alcoholic, in addiction. And it took us back to his 6th grade classroom, his green desk. And it showed him how the anger of what had happened in his lifetime rooted in 6th grade, even though it presented as alcoholism later in his life. So that was the point of healing, is we're healing and we're protecting the energy that the energy being, the energy field from his 6th grade selves, and that rippled forward into his adulthood.
Okay. Next question. What do you think about sleep paralysis?
I think sleep paralysis sometimes is a neurological issue, and sometimes it is because we woke up too early and something was going on, almost always to our benefit, but that doesn't always mean that that's how we interpret it. And the sleep paralysis is a response either of something happening in our brain biologically or metaphysically.
Okay. Do you call on any archangels or spirits to protect you and the individuals who you go to another dimension with?
No, I don't use any type of protection at all.
Okay. How does she ensure the client's physical and emotional safety when clearing the trauma?
I'm very trauma trained. And I mean, I wrote a book on trauma that is designed to help clinicians understand trauma differently. So when I'm working with individuals, I have an earpiece in my ear, not a physical earpiece, but it's this energetic earpiece that connects me to their superconscious. Their superconscious will tell me, we're bringing them into session today because we want you to work on the traumas in their feet. They're not grounded. They're doing spiritual work for other people. They're doing Reiki. They're doing this. We need to get the soul back into the body to get the meridians back online, because they're going to destroy their feet if they don't. And so that might be the session, and I'm getting the intel from their higher consciousness, their higher self will tell me what's going on. So when I'm working with someone and we're going deep into trauma, And there's going to be a video coming out in about a month
Okay.
where I took someone back to a suppressed memory. Really big deal for people to watch the video. And it showed how I'm co-regulating their nervous system, how I'm monitoring the breathing, I'm monitoring the heart rate. I'm also paying very much attention to what their higher self is asking me to do and where to look. So they're being covered from the inside out. I'm on the outside, and then they're super conscious on the inside, and we're guiding that individual to healing from both angles.
Okay. Someone is saying, can she spell her name and her website? So I know it's Annie, Annie, and is it Imprimera? Is that how you pronounce it?
Emprima.
Imprima, all right. And that's Emprima. And I also type it in the chat so that you can have it. And also the can you say what your website is again?
AnnieEmprima.com
Okay.
or one Emprima. So Annie Emprima is going to be the easiest to follow in an auditory way.
So her first and last name.com. So I'll also type that in so you'll know what that is. So does she believe in chakra balancing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of our diseases are because we're out of balance.
Mhm.
So when I'm looking with someone, I'm working with someone that has like thyroiditis, like, okay, let's go find out what words were swallowed, what words couldn't be spoken, what's going on here.
All right. Someone wants to know how much is a session and how many sessions are recommended.
The first is a discovery session. So anyone going to my website, the website's going to direct them. Every brand new person gets a discovery session because I need to know what their comfort level is, how much trauma they're coming in with. I need to know their belief system. I need to know aspects of who they are. And if I don't, I'm not honoring the whole self. So the discovery session lets their nervous system interview mine. It lets me see how well we sync. And then I'm going to test the different little mini demos of the different modalities to see what's the best fit and what their superconscious wants to work on. So the discovery session right now, um, today is 150. After August 12th, that does change because my book will be released, and that will create higher demand on my website.
Okay. Do you do you pray to or communicate with any higher beings for guidance in your personal life or work?
No, I don't need to. They make it very clear. They arrive on time.
All right.
And I genuinely can say I don't really need to have like a very formal, because I'm constantly in communication with my higher self, and I'm constantly in communication with collective consciousness, and I'm constantly in communication with my clients.
All right. Someone is asking, do you take insurance?
No.
Insurance.
Nope.
Yeah, they ask me that all the time too.
Mhm.
So, is there a specific reason that you are in Las Vegas?
I came here 20 years ago. The answer is yes. I came here 20 years ago. I saw the Bellagio fountains. I know that that's not an answer to move here, but something said you belong here. And I moved here. And almost all of my research, my reconnaissance of trauma came from Las Vegas, from interactions with people here. So all of my research in human behavior has come from Las Vegas, but I can feel I've got warning orders to transfer coming soon. So probably in the next year.
Okay. Well, Annie, thank you for coming on. I appreciate having this conversation with you. I like to see and get different perspectives on,
Yeah.
dealing with this. So I definitely enjoyed the conversation with you. Is there any last words you would like to say before we wrap everything up?
Yeah, I think anyone that's in this field, we have an obligation and a responsibility to work on our traumas. Because when we do, that clears the rips, tears, and leaks in our energy field, and it brings us to sovereign coherence, where our energy is just our energy. And when we are emitting and emanating that energy strongly, nothing interferes with it. It's like the bright light. Darkness cannot come in when the light is really bright. And so I think trauma is such a big, big, big focal point in spiritual and metaphysical work. And yet it is one of the most underrated things that we talk about.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on True Tales and Testimony. Any individuals that's watching this, remember, in order to see these interviews, this podcast live, follow the Woke Prophet on kick.com. Make sure that you subscribe, and you will be able to watch these great guests like Annie. You can watch it in live, real live time. So again, thanks for coming on, Annie. I appreciate
Yeah.
all your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.